Well, welcome back to part 2 of my personal history of MCH, and we'll get started right away with talking about Walsh and Warren. A year later, when I graduated from public health school with my newly minted degree in tropical public health, studying under Tom Weller, who incidentally won the Nobel Prize for growing polio vaccine, selective primary health care was becoming the name of the game. Selective primary health care was first proposed by Walsh and Warren in a special article in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1979 and presented at a meeting on health and population in developing countries in Bellagio, Italy. The article acknowledges that important goals set at Alma-Ata, but then opines that the very scope makes them unobtainable because the cost and numbers of trained personnel required. Indeed, the World Bank estimated that it would cost billions of dollars to provide minimal, basic, not comprehensive health services by the year 2000 to all the poor in developing countries. The Walsh and Warren approach of selective primary health care was that rationally conceived, best data-based selective attack on the most severe public health problems facing a region was called for. This approach was they called selective primary health care, directed at preventing or treating the few diseases that are responsible for the greatest mortality and morbidity in less developed areas, and for which interventions of proved efficacy existed. They proposed selecting health problems based on prevalence, morbidity, mortality, and the feasibility of control, and then categorizing these diseases as high, medium, or low priority based on the adequacy of control measures. For medium or low priority diseases, they recommended investing in research and development of either less costly or more efficacious means of prevention and treatment. They distinguished between comprehensive primary health care, acknowledging that because resources for health programs were limited, the comprehensive primary care that included sanitation, safe water, and economic and social improvement of the population would be financially out of reach. Their approach of basic health care was more circumscribed in its approach. Its goal was to provide health workers and establish clinics for treating the most important illnesses within a population. In their paper, Walsh and Warren argue that vector control, water and sanitation programs, and nutrition supplementation are better done by others, often expensive and sometimes ineffective in reducing mortality. Instead, they proposed the selective approach to control endemic diseases, focusing on children up to 3 years and women in childbearing years, providing this population with measles and DPT vaccination, tetanus toxoid for women in childbearing years, encouragement of long-term breastfeeding, provision of chloroquine for episodes of fever in children under 3 where malaria is prevalent, and ORT packets and instructions for diarrhea. Services would be provided by fixed units or mobile teams visiting once every 4 to 6 months at a cost of $1.26 per patient contact. The cost of a child death averted was $200 to $250, and medications accounted for 30 to 50% of the cost. Selective primary health care led to a vertical model of health services delivery in various forms. When you read Overcoming Health System Constraints by Travis, as you prepare for the Pandora case, you will come upon his description of the 4 Ds that can occur with vertical systems. These 4 Ds are duplications, which are running parallel systems like drugs and family planning commodities, logistics systems separately. This has the effect of increasing transport cost and increasing the number of forms that health workers need to complete to secure their drug supply, among other things. Distortions, which can produce a separate cadre of better paid health workers for specific tasks of a program. This sometimes is experienced by top-offs, salary top-offs that are given to workers on special projects, and also may deplete staff from other key functions and demotivate those who are not receiving these economic incentives for working on the vertical programs. Disruptions. Programs often train health workers by taking them away from their jobs for several days or weeks, leaving their post vacant. This is something that has been seen to happen in large-scale immunization campaigns and in multiple trainings, uncoordinated across programs. Distractions are the final fourth D, and distractions refer to data requirements, for example, data requirements for specific programs. Specific and uncoordinated reporting requirements of donors, for example, can lead to several forms being filled out by a single health worker for the same problem, distracting them from more productive use of their time. In 1982, I was working in Morocco with the Ministry of Health on a USAID-funded project to improve management of health services. In December of that year, in his annual State of the World Children's Report, James Grant, the executive director of UNICEF, launched an initiative known as the Child Survival Revolution. The campaign reversed conventional wisdom. Rates of infant and young child mortality had previously been seen as a reflection of the country's development. Jim Grant, to the contrary, believed that targeting simple, inexpensive interventions to young children that could dramatically cut the rate of child deaths, and that we didn't have to wait for countries to improve economically before health of children could improve. So Jim Grant introduced a primary health care package called GOBI. GOBI was 4 simple, inexpensive interventions. GOBI stands for growth monitoring, oral rehydration therapy, the O, breastfeeding, the B, and immunization, the I. In 1985, which coincidentally was my last year working in Morocco, UNICEF added 3 F's to GOBI, making it GOBI-FFF. The 3 F's were family planning and birth spacing, food supplementation, and the promotion of female literacy. James Grant, of course, was a public health giant. We started off this little talk by saying that we can see as far as we can because of the shoulders that we stand on. And we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. And this, of course, is certainly true. We are all standing on the shoulders of James Grant. Whatever the power of the UNICEF Alliance, much of its success was due to the extraordinary energy and vision of this person, James Grant. He was the architect of UNICEF's fine-tuned strategy of social mobilization. Not only did he enlist the media and advertising industries, he also invited partners from every nook and cranny of society, from religious leaders to goodwill ambassadors, from heads of state to municipal mayors, from sports personalities to parliamentarians, from professional associations to trade unions. All were united behind Jim Grant to join the child survival revolution and development movement and to spread UNICEF's message. He also created an international task force on child survival and development that included many of the world's big league players in international health: the Rockefeller Foundation, UNDP, UNICEF, the World Bank, and WHO, to resolve technical issues associated with the campaign and to build its momentum. The campaign became broader than UNICEF and is often thought of as the Grand Alliance for Children. UNICEF began to recognize that women had an importance that went way beyond their biologically or socially determined maternal roles. And the women were economic providers, they were organizers and leaders, and in many parts of the developing world, women made up as much as a third of heads of household. And so by the mid-1980s, UNICEF started to recognize the importance of women to child survival and development, adding the 3 F's to their program. While I was working in Morocco and afterwards at Management Sciences for Health, where I was initially involved in management training for family planning programs, a new political and economic philosophy was developing that had to do with the way government services were delivered. Developing countries had incurred large debts, and the World Bank began encouraging market-driven economic reforms as a requirement for continued foreign aid or debt relief. Sound familiar? The World Development Report, called Investing in Health in 1993, abandoned PHC in favor of looking at health in economic terms. What are the economic benefits to improved health? Improved health was not a consequence of development, but rather improved health could improve human capital and promote development. The report emphasizes health activities and the role of the health sector and gives less attention to PHC's multi-sectoral approach. Actually, one of our own faculty, Deborah Main, is credited, along with Alan Rosenfield, in putting the M back in MCH. At the end of the 1980s, the World Bank, in collaboration with WHO and UNFPA, sponsored a conference on safe motherhood in Nairobi, Kenya, to raise the global awareness about the impact of maternal mortality and morbidity. The conference launched the Safe Motherhood Initiative, which issued an international call to action to reduce maternal mortality and morbidity by 1/2 by the year 2000. It also led to the formation of the Interagency Group for Safe Motherhood, which has since been joined by UNICEF, UNDP, IPPF, and the Population Council. The Safe Motherhood Initiative's target has subsequently been adopted by most developing countries. Under the Safe Motherhood Initiative, countries had developed programs to reduce maternal mortality and morbidity. The strategies adopted to make motherhood safe vary among countries and include providing family planning services, providing post-abortion care, promoting antenatal care, ensuring skilled assistance during childbirth, improving essential obstetric care, and addressing reproductive health needs of adolescents. ICPD, which occurred in 1994 in Cairo, was an extraordinary conference. At the time, I was doing family planning work with MCH and had the rare and exciting opportunity to participate in the Cairo ICPD conference. The conference focused on questions of population, economic growth, sustainable development, and human rights and education of women. The conference made general recommendations, but it was the responsibility of each country to apply the recommendations in the context of their own national priorities, laws, and religious, ethical, and cultural principles. Some areas, such as sexual education, liberty and equality between women and men within a marriage, mutual consent of women, forced marriage by family, were sensitive and very different between countries. ICPD was followed 1 year later by the International Conference on Women that further defined and discussed these issues. Well, now we'll jump to 1995. IMCI, which was launched in the mid-1990s by WHO's Child and Adolescent Health and Development Department, is now working in about 100 countries. IMCI represented a significant change to the approach of solving child health problems. In fact, IMCI replaced the selective single technology approach that had been pioneered by James Grant in UNICEF's Child Survival Revolution, with a program to work with and develop basic health services and involve households and communities. Integrated management of childhood illness is a broad strategy that encourages communities and health workers to see the child as a whole, not just as a single problem or disease. IMCI helps countries use their scarce health resources in efficient ways by combining prevention and treatment of the most common childhood illnesses into simple guidelines and messages. Countries adapt these guidelines to meet their needs and use them to train health workers at all levels, improve supervision, make sure essential drugs are available, and mobilize families and communities in support of child health. This approach steps away from the vertical approach to healthcare improvement and embraces a much wider horizontal approach, even as newer programs like Rollback Malaria, Stop TB, and the Global Fund have continued to focus selectively on specific diseases. IMCI coincides with increasing interest in broader health system-wide approaches and acknowledgement of the limitations of vertical programs and the 4 Ds that we talked about earlier. IMCI has been operating for over 10 years, and the question was, did it make any difference? To their credit, WHO developed a multi-country evaluation to answer this question. The MCE publications presented detailed findings from IMCI sites as well as the result of cross-site analysis. And it was an attempt to establish an evidence base for the delivery of health services using the IMCI approach. They published a full set of their findings in the Lancet, both positive and negative, and there were several conclusions that they came up with. First, one needs to begin with local epidemiology. One needs to prioritize interventions. Training must be of high quality. Supportive supervision is essential for successful programs on the ground, and case management at the community level was very important. And case management at the community level needed to emphasize prevention and to deal with nutritional issues. In the year 2000, just at the turn of the new millennium, I was beginning to develop a distance education program at MCH to train managers and leaders online. And at that same time, 189 countries were meeting in New York to develop 8 Millennium Development Goals, 6 of which were health-related. MDG 4 and MDG 5 are specifically relevant to us in IH 887. MDG 4 to reduce child mortality by 2/3 and MDG 5 to reduce maternal mortality by 3/4 are key to improving maternal and child health. But in spite of the MDGs, The child survival revolution had lost its prominent position that it had had under James Grant. By 2003, the health of children had definitely taken the proverbial international back seat. All the focus was going to HIV/AIDS and other high-profile international partnerships. In 2003, The Lancet published the Child Survivor series, which is in your reading for IH887. This was an attempt to revive child survival and get it on the agenda of the international health community. In 2008, the year after I joined the faculty full-time at BUSPH, The Lancet did the same thing for maternal health that it had done for child survival 5 years earlier by publishing a series of 5 articles that were a call to action to reinvent maternal survival. The call to action addressed both a strategic vision, the financial resources and human resources necessary, and called for a tracking system to monitor progress made in improving maternal health with an expanded set of indicators. These indicators, as we will learn later in this course, were the beginning of the process indicators for measuring maternal outcomes and specifically emergency obstetric care. The Lancet articles on maternal survival dealt with maternal mortality, who, when, where, and why, strategies for reducing maternal mortality, getting on with what works, going to scale with professional skilled care, mobilizing financial resources for maternal health, and maternal health in poor countries, the broader context, and a call for action. So that's it. And I'll leave you with a final question. What will your role be? Will you follow the footsteps of Andrea Stampar and Maurice King and James Grant and provide leadership and strengthen health systems, target resources, and build awareness and commitment to improve maternal and child health around the globe in the coming decade? My bet is that you will. So that's it for my personal history of maternal and child health, and I'll look forward to seeing you in IH887 in the fall for our first class. Take care and be well.